A few things I wanted to show you before we get to that point is every 10 years, there is a census, all right? And that's how we kind of figure out where everyone lives, okay? So the census helps us to understand as a country, one, how the population shifts from one place to another. So when we talk about population, you guys probably talked about the census a little bit in Unit 2. We use the numbers from that to figure out which states get new, higher numbers of politicians versus which states that don't, based on population shifts, all right? Asian Americans, African Americans, Hispanics, these are the 3 largest ethnic subgroups in the United States. When I say subgroup, I mean ethnic minority. African American is not the largest American minority. They're not. Hispanic Americans are. Hispanics are not only, well, I guess in recent years, you see a trend where less and less actual migration is taking place, but the populations tend to have higher natural increase, okay? And African American natural increase is actually low, like whites. So African Americans are somewhere around 10% of the overall U.S. population, more than that in the American South. Hispanics make up somewhere around 16%. All right. When you look at the distribution of ethnic groups in the United States, it looks kind of like this. Which ethnic group you're looking at? Hispanic or Latino. Why do we see the most Hispanics and Latinos living along the southern United States, kind of in the southern and western region? Distance decay. Y'all remember that term from Unit 1? Distance decay. All right, so in other words, people tend to go, or a phenomenon tends to take place in places closest to its point of origin. All right, there's no one on earth makes the decision to move randomly. All right, I moved to the part of South Carolina where I live. I live in a small town just outside of Augusta, Georgia, but in the South Carolina side. And I moved from Columbia, South Carolina, because I was looking for a job, right? People move for reasons that make sense. In this case, people are trying to move to the United States looking for opportunities from Central and South America, which has led to large amounts of immigration and large population clusters along the border with Mexico, or closest to places like Cuba, or places like Puerto Rico, or places like even Central America, where people are just able to sail up and get into parts of the Panhandle of Florida. I also want to show you this because remember we were talking about religion last week, and notice that the Catholic population looks very similar to the ethnic Hispanic population. Well, that's because Catholic Christianity is heavily and widely practiced by Hispanics. All right, so the majority of Catholics in the world, we talked about this last week, live in Central and South America. Well, you see that reflected here as well through their ethnicity in the United States. The majority of blacks in our country live in the American South, but notice also that you've got counties, you see my mouse, counties in parts of the North that have large African American populations as well. Now, if you look at this, you've got Chicago right here. You've got Detroit right here, right? You've got St. Louis right here. These northern cities became, I guess, targets of migration from African Americans trying to escape the South during the Great Migration. Right. So what I'm talking about here is this is a period of time during Jim Crow, a little bit, you're into the early 1900s, maybe more like the 30s or 40s. A lot of people start moving up to the North in search of jobs or in search of opportunity to do anything, get a better life than what's going on in the South, where you still have lynchings and the KKK. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that everything was rosy and perfect in places in the northern part of the country, but it was way better. There was an excellent book called Black Boy by Richard Wright. He was a civil rights advocate during the civil rights movement. I was assigned to read this book in a class I took in college, but it was a really good book. And the first half of that story talks about his efforts to essentially pocket. He worked at a movie theater. He pocketed half of the box office earnings in order to afford a one-way trip up to I don't know where I can't remember which city he moved into. But these still have large African American populations going back to that. Now, there's starting to be more of a counter migration. A lot of African Americans are coming back to the South, but that's for a different story, a different day. Asian American groups, primarily in Hawaii, that makes sense. Parts of Alaska. And what city is that? San Francisco. All right, very, very large Asian population there as well. Makes sense because the Pacific Ocean is the border essentially between Asia and the United States. And so distance decay, people are going to travel the least amount of distance they need to, one of Ravenstein's laws. So that's why you have that there. So we've already, this here is what we're just going to talk about, where ethnic groups tend to place themselves within certain regions of a certain location. So in Chicago, we've already seen this. You've got, this here is a different way to look at it, but you've got your Hispanic population, your African-American, no, I'm sorry, this is not Chicago, this is Los Angeles, all right, in California. By the way, Los Angeles is the second largest city in the United States. The biggest in terms of population is New York City. The third biggest is Chicago.